Hello, good evening, and welcome. This is the APL Project Texas self-documentary series. The only relevant pieces of information that you will need to understand this format are as follows. Project Texas is my undertaking to compete in and win next year's BPN Go One More Last Man Standing Ultramarathon. Over the course of the next 4.5 months, I'll be recording myself in this very way to engage in self-study, self-documentation, and ideally, someday, retrospective progress. For those of you unaware, I have done something like this before, in the build-up to running across Germany, in fact, but I never did so consistently. I uploaded a few videos, and eventually I stopped. I didn't know then, but I understand today. The reason I never continued was simple. The videos in the making for me were too demanding because I was too focused on what it was that I was providing those potentially listening, and wasn't really focused enough on what it was that I was experiencing. That should be the core of the intention here. That, I hope and think, is the reason why you're listening. So, until the end of the year, I want to commit myself to recording every single evening before I go to bed. And moving forward from then, we will see. But for the remainder of 2025, if you want to join, you'll be seeing me and listening to me every single day. Now, there are two main reasons as to why I do this, why I'm doing this right now. First and foremost, I want to, one day, when the time is right, have something to look back on, have something to learn from, have something to remember this experience by, other than the many, many kilometers running on my own and the journal entries. And I think this is a beautiful way to do so. I imagine myself one day, 53 years old, looking back at myself at 26 and laughing for being so stuck up and being ambitious and young and still having some hair. Ultimately, I just want to engage in being human as much as I can. I'm in the pursuit of extremes of emotion and experience. That's a quote by Anthony Bourdain, I think, yes. The second reason as to why I'm doing this is also fairly straightforward. Speech. It's not that I struggle with my speech, but I can think of quite a few people who, whenever I listen to them, I feel inspired and ignited and encouraged, and feel like in real time the texture of my soul is changing and shifting. And well, I want to have a crack at it. I think speech is the most important of skills that you can work on in your life. And language has given me everything that I have. So, I'm going to try to avoid using specific words that I sometimes tend to prioritize. I will correct myself whenever I don't speak properly. I tend to speak too quickly sometimes, so I will try to slow myself down. This will do nothing for your listening experience, but it will do plenty for my human experience, if I may say so. So, the rules are laid out and simple. Let's get into it. Now, for the intro episode, I was thinking of what to do, what to say, what to record, what to share with you. And I caught myself realizing again that is the wrong intention. That is the wrong target to shoot for. I don't want to focus on what it is that I'm providing. I want to focus on what it is that I'm experiencing, and I want to share this. I want to treat this as much as I can as a conversation that I would have with people, with human beings, on a couch. If they were to ask me specific things, I would answer in specific ways. That's what I want to do. You see, just last month, quite a lot of people have began following me on Instagram. I will never take the attention for granted. I will never take the attention for granted. And I appreciate the support. I was flooded with messages of encouragement and love, and I thank you all. And in the name of human experience, I want to invite all of you, those of you who are interested, in accompanying me on this journey of becoming someone that can win a prestigious race, as the Go One More will be. From my past experiences, be that a 14-month solo trek across Europe or a 61-day, 61-marathon project across Germany, the most fascinating of times is the build-up, is the expedition to the event. And I don't think I'm doing anything wrong by sharing myself in this time with others. In fact, I think it's important that as many of us as possible try to manifest in this world our ambitions, our goals, our dreams, our pursuits. You see, to make ambition public, to make ambition paired with execution public, inevitably so will result in competence. And competence is important. Well, because the most biggest of shifts in my life, the biggest developments of self in my life, have happened because I could model them after very impressive people. So here we are. Now, before I begin, I want to thank all of you, everyone who asked me to do this again, everyone who encouraged me to continue the series, and everyone who said they're looking forward to listening. Again, I don't take you for granted. I appreciate you. And I hope that in delivering to myself, I can deliver something to and for you as well. So thank you. Just last week, I asked on my Instagram story for some questions for a Q&A. And so this is what the episode is going to be, the Q&A. I've got all the questions here. It's about 21 questions. I wrote them all down, and I'm going to go through them one by one, and I will end the episode for tonight here and record again tomorrow. So thank you, and let's begin. First question from Yocas Diaz. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the names. Some of you have some sketchy freaking Instagram handles. Yocas Diaz. Which is harder, running in the heat or the cold? Good, simple question to start things off. The heat. Now, the answer is subjective, but the question is also impossible not to be answered in a subjective manner. So when I say the heat, I'm speaking for myself and myself only. I'm not exactly sure why, but I don't respond to the heat as poorly as I do to the cold, despite the fact that I'm tall, white, blue-eyed, and blonde. I've always enjoyed the sun. I've never struggled in the heat with humidity. In fact, I worked in Mallorca this summer, essentially all summer, and had a blast training in the hills in 35-degree weather. So the cold, I'm not as good with. But these things change and vary. They come with different logistical issues. But generally speaking, the heat is easier, at least for me. Thank you. Next question. Aman. How do you mentally prepare for such a large event like Texas? For those of you unaware, the last man standing format, which is the format of the race that I'll be competing in, functions in a very specific way. The race begins at noon, and you have exactly 1 hour to complete a 6.7 kilometer loop. 1 p.m. sharp, the next 6.7 kilometer loop begins. That means if you complete loop 1 in, say, 15 minutes, you have 10 minutes to yourself to recover, to eat, to chill. By 1 p.m., you have to be running again. By 2 p.m., the next loop continues. By 3 p.m., the next loop continues. And this goes on for as long as it takes for one person left to be standing. I hope that made sense. So how do you mentally prepare for such a large event like Texas? Accumulation, really. You need to, first and foremost, dedicate yourself to building a very, very, very large mountain of evidence that you are ready, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Physically, the physical plane would be the training. You need to log the miles. You need to lift the weights. You need to recover when recovery is needed. You need to eat what you have to eat. The emotional plane would more so be, I think, decisions you make. People you give time to and you don't give time to. Stuff you engage with and you don't engage with. The books you read and the books you don't read. All that is relevant. And all those decisions have to be filtered through the lens of, is this of benefit or not to the race? Now, I'm not preaching here, something that I'm practicing. I do struggle with this, particularly with the smaller decisions. It's easy nowadays to get distracted, and I need to do better when it comes to this. But how do I prepare? I build evidence. Lots and lots of evidence. If you would like for me to answer the question more specifically, write in the comments or shoot me a message. But that's the first and foremost piece of information that I can give you. Build lots of evidence. Thank you. Next question. Figures you look up to in the creative, athletic, and personal space. It's a beautiful question. I'm going to give you one person for each individual category. So, a figure I look up to in the creative would be, and there are many, they're interchangeable. I think I could answer this question differently each and every single time someone were to ask me the question. So bear with me here. A figure I look up to in the creative would be Denzel Washington. I look up to many actors. I think many people don't know, but I'm film particularly, but art as a whole is a big passion of mine. And Denzel is someone who's held himself to a standard over the entirety of his career, a leading man standard. And aside from his work being absolutely brilliant, I think I've also always enjoyed him outside of his work whenever I saw him in interviews. So, Denzel Washington. In the athletic, I'm going to go with a perhaps more generic answer, but Kobe Bryant. A lot of people young men specifically, a lot of people look up to Kobe nowadays because of the stories and the temperament and the Black Mamba persona. But what a lot of people get wrong with him, I think, is that they don't see that the reason all of that was the reason he was able to do any and all of that, the reason why he was able to live the way he did, was because Kobe was in love with what he was doing. The foundation for his ambition was love for the sport. And to love something so dearly that you dedicate virtually all of your being to it, it's pretty powerful stuff. So I'm going to go with Kobe. The personal space. Now, luckily, I have many people to choose from here. So again, ask me this question 8 times, I will give you 8 different answers. But today, right now, in the personal space, I'm going to say my coach, Alyssa. Alyssa is my running coach currently. She too will be competing next year at the race. She's an absolute monster of an athlete. But I choose her in the personal category because she's very giving, she's very caring, and she works so freaking hard, man. I'm still very much behind her level of athletic competence. So there's lots of work that needs to be done in the coming months, even to beat her. But yeah, Alyssa. Thank you. Next question. Paul. Could you share 3 books with us that have shaped or changed you? Your big inspiration. Thank you. Paul submitted this question in German. In my poll on the story, I did say that you can pose the questions in German, Polish, or English, and I will answer in English. So, Paul, danke. 3 books. I've done a video about this, so I will tell you now that if you want me to expand on each individual book, I'm going to tell you to just check out my YouTube channel, and there's a book. There's a video that is literally called "Books That Have Changed Me." But I will name them for you right now. The first would be A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I read this book for the first time when I lived on the island of Mykonos, in the middle of a 14-month solo expedition across Europe on foot. I read it at night, at work, really. I worked as a restaurant host, and I worked at a front desk outside the restaurant, welcoming and escorting people into the restaurant. And most evenings were pretty chill and quiet and slow, so I had lots of time to journal and read. And there were quite a few evenings out there while I was reading and crying my eyes out. So, A Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. The second book would be Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. Severely underrated. I think mainly because people don't expect much of it from an actor. But for young creatives who are looking for direction, a phenomenal book. And the third would be A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. A beautiful tale of male ambition, shadow integration, individuation, and the importance of words and how they relate to magic, all cloaked and disguised as a novel for children. Fantastic book. So I repeat, A Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, Green Lights, Matthew McConaughey, and A Wizard of Earthsea, Ursula K. Le Guin. Thank you, Paul. Next question. Murphy, how many calories a day do you eat? I don't know. I don't count them. I never will. It's not the way I live and function. I'm a very intuitive individual. So I do rely on thinking bodily, not just cognitively. And so I sleep as much as I need to recover, and I eat as much as I need to function and recover. But I have no idea how many calories a day I eat, and I likely never will. So, thank you, Murphy. Next question. Philip, how are you really doing? This was another question that was submitted in German. Danke, Philip. I'm doing good. I'm doing good, you know? I think when you devote yourself to one specific task, and you dedicate yourself to pursuing this task singularly, and this is my experience, life becomes pretty fucking good. Difficult, but really fucking good. So, I'm good, man. Thank you. Next question. Helena. Oh, fuck yeah. I remember this question. Helena asks, do you believe in a particular God? Are you Christian? Right. This is an exceptionally difficult question to answer. I avoid usually speaking about this topic too publicly, specifically this question too publicly, because I don't think there's anything more intimate to discuss than your personal human beliefs in regards to religion and faith. And I'm all for being open, vulnerable, and discussing everything. But this is one thing I really don't... I've always felt a little too much respect for than just to discuss it haphazardly. Now, not too long ago, a young lady asked me over Instagram if I am Christian. And I told her that I can't say that I am until I know by which standards and metrics you would define a Christian. What does it mean for you to be a Christian? I think specifically now, at least in my circles, religion seems to be gaining traction in popularity. Predominantly standard Western Catholic and Christian beliefs. And there are many things that I disagree with when it comes to religion, specifically when it comes to the organization of the church. This, I think, is something many people agree with. So, am I a Christian? Carefully, I'm going to answer that I don't know. And I'm going to extend the opportunity for anyone who's interested to engage in a conversation with me and ask me questions. In a one-on-one conversation, perhaps I can come to a better answer, but I just don't know. But do I believe in a particular God? Yes. Yes, I do. I heard once that God is best characterized as the spirit of the highest calling. Other times I heard that God is best characterized as our conscience, the voice that speaks to us when we do something wrong, or when we do something well. I believe in God. I speak to God. And I feel God speaks to me. But do I know what specific religious boundaries this God works by? No, I have no idea. Do I believe in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? I'm inclined to say yes. But for me, personally, first and foremost, if I were to define it, I would say that God is the spirit of the highest calling. That is an essence that I can believe in. I hope that's enough. I will add, I wear this ring that I got myself, I don't know if you can see, that I got myself in Antiparos, Greece earlier this year. It's by an artist named Gero Christo. The ring is called A Step Closer to God. I think that's where I currently am. I'm a step closer to God. Thank you and much love. Next question. Samuele, why do you live in Poland, not in Germany? Let me be transparent with you. The reason I live in Poland and not in Germany is not too difficult. I don't own any property. Over the past 3 years of my life, I've been traveling quite a bit. Over the past 3 years of my life, I have worked in Germany, I've worked in Spain, I've worked in Switzerland, Croatia, Greece, Italy. I've been on the move quite a lot. When I finished the large walkabout across Europe and returned to Germany, I spent about a year in Germany before I began the big race across the country. And when the race was finished, I moved to Poland because my mother just moved back to Warsaw after being gone for, I think, 13 years. Right now, I'm one of those 26-year-olds who lives with their mother, and the irony of that doesn't escape me. I know what that sounds like. But an important caveat is that I was 14 years old when the British social services took me from my mother and put me into foster care, and it would take almost 10 years before she and I ever really built a somewhat stable relationship with each other. Now she's here in Warsaw, she's working, she's living. And in some sense, some very ethereal sense, we're catching up on lost time. Now, there is no real catching up in life, I understand that. But I also understand that I will never again have the opportunity to do so, to do what I'm doing now. I think very, very soon a new chapter of my life will begin, and this will no longer be possible, which in a sense I'm also looking forward to. But my life is now in Warsaw. My training is in Warsaw. My property, my belongings are all in Warsaw. I have nothing in Germany except for family members. And I don't miss Germany. Thank you. Next question. Mentor from any movie that you'd want as your own. Again, a beautiful question, and I thank you for this question, because in putting up the Q&A, I was worried that too many of the questions would be centered around sports and coaching. I've watched many, many movies growing up. In fact, I like to say that I was raised on film. But this is almost an impossible question to answer. I recorded this whole thing, all these questions, once before on my phone. Many of you will know this. Only to realize after an hour and 15 minutes of recording that the phone was not recording. And I struggled with this question a lot. And now that I've had time to think about it, I still don't really have a definitive answer. It's difficult to have one. If I had to choose a mentor from any movie, if I'm allowed to reshape the structure of the question and go mentor from any piece of media that you'd want as your own, then I would probably go with Uncle Iroh from The Last Airbender. For very obvious reasons. If you've seen Avatar The Last Airbender, you will know. Uncle Iroh is the most glorious depiction of a fierce warrior turned calm, nurturing man. An arc of individuation and of becoming that I think many can look up to. So, Uncle Iroh. Otherwise, if I had to choose a mentor from real life, I wouldn't have to think too long. I've had quite a few that were great. One of whom has been Sean Fogarty, the man whom I accredit with teaching me how to write. A great friend and a great mentor. Thank you. Next question. Outside of physical, what goals do you have for Project Texas? It's funny the question is phrased this way because I don't have any physical goals for Texas. I wouldn't even characterize winning the race as a physical goal. For me, running has never been a physical endeavor. The experience of running, to me, is an act of spirituality. So all my goals regarding Project Texas are outside of the physical plane. And if I had to title them with one main banner, one main word, it would be becoming. I want to engage radically in the process of becoming, of pursuing something fiercely and becoming. That's all. Thank you. Next question. Yana, which person has influenced you most in your life? Now, this is exciting. I'm going to assume that you are not looking for me to say my mother and father, because I think unless they have been completely absent in your life, inevitably so, it's very likely that they were the people who have influenced you the most in your life. But I have someone else in mind. And I'm going to need some of you to be patient with me as I say this and explain this, okay? The person who has influenced me most in my life has probably been Dr. Jordan Peterson. Now, I'm aware of his current situation. I'm aware of what even I would refer to as his recent decline. I'm aware of his development. I'm not going to get into it too much. I think that's a very nuanced conversation, and it's impossible to have with those who haven't closely been following his life, or at least somewhat closely following his life over the past 10-ish years. But what I will say is this. Years ago, when Jordan Peterson was still far more a teacher than he was a political figure, Jordan Peterson undoubtedly was the best in the world when it came to sharing an encouraging body of work on the internet. Listening to his old lectures, and even the first few years of his public interviews, what listening to an extremely well-spoken and very, very educated man has done for me as a young man was immeasurable. I never had anyone tell me explicitly how important it is for me to pick myself up, take care of my speech, to willingly look for and take on responsibility. All these things in there, these were themes, these were realities and facts of life that were never discussed in my household. That no one close to me was even remotely discussing. And he was really all about that. And then obviously to add on top, just the amount of information, the dense mountains and forests of information that he could bring into a lecture, and then just have you receive this information over the span of 45 minutes, an hour and a half, or 6 hours, depending on the structure of the lecture, was incredible. It was really, really incredible. And I'm very thankful to him. I hope one day to speak to him. In fact, I hope one day to be on his podcast. It would be a great honor. And the effect he's had on my life, outside of political realities, outside of all that, the effect that he has had, the effect that Dr. Jordan B. Peterson has had on the infrastructure of my soul, on my constitution, has been truly immense. And I owe the man a lot. I really do. And if anything, I would recommend that you go to YouTube and you watch his old lecture series. His old lecture series on The Lion King or Pinocchio are usually the best ones to get into. Or on the Gulag Archipelago, or there's so many. So many. He held a lecture once about a children's story about a dragon in a house. Remarkable lecture. I really recommend you check it out if you're not familiar. If you want to check out his books, I wouldn't recommend the standard 12 Rules for Life or 12 More Rules for Life Beyond Order, his second and third book. I would recommend you buy Maps of Meaning, his first book. That book was written over the span of 15 years. 15 years of a daily dedication. In his interviews, he said he spent approximately 3 hours a day every single day for 15 years working on that book. And he said that he must have probably gone over each individual sentence in 50 different variations just to wrestle with and develop the most sharp, precise, and perfect sentences for this book. He's very big on the importance of writing and thinking. Check him out. That's the answer. Jordan B. Peterson. Thank you for the question. Next. Chrome Keisha, Chrome easier. I'm not sure. This question was posed in German, and the question originally was, "Wer ist dein innerer Schweinehund?" which translates loosely into "Who is your weaker self?" Now, I translate Schweinehund into weaker self because there is no literal translation for Schweinehund from German into English. That term doesn't really exist in the English language. But it boils down essentially to a weaker self. And that's exactly how I would answer your question. If you are asking me who is my own inner bitch that I have to fight with, specifically in training, it's me. It's my weaker self. I said earlier that God can best be characterized as a spirit of the highest calling. And I would say that at my best, it is that spirit of the highest calling having a conversation with my highest self, the version of me that I aspire to be. But if a highest self exists, then so must a lowest self. And, well, what a beautiful way to engage with your own soul. To champion your own weaknesses in whatever capacity, large or small, a 5-kilometer run, or doing your homework, or making your bed, or brushing your teeth, or taking care of that phone call, whatever it may be, whatever wrestling with your weakest self may constitute. It's an important thing to engage with, a very important thing to engage with. If you don't, you are contributing to offering the world an adult infant. And you might not know this, but you manifesting the very best of yourself is actually your obligation, your moral obligation in this life. Because you see, when you can manifest the very best of yourself, you are no longer simply of use to you. You are inevitably so, whether you want it or not, of use to everyone around you. You have the capacity to improve lives, existences, stories. There's nothing more noble than improving someone else's life. Nothing. Zero. That's someone else's life, man. It's a sacred and fragile thing. If you're ever in a rut, ask yourself when the last time was that you've been of any use to someone. I repeat, whenever you're in a rut, whenever you're depressed, ask yourself when the last time was that you have been of any use to someone. I have never been depressed while I was of use to someone else. And every time I was depressed, I just wasn't being of any use to anyone else. There's a link there. Thank you for the question. Next. Stinker 3000. 3 things you're proud of yourself for. Go. I try significantly more often than I fail, and I fail quite a lot. I've lived and continue to live my life in a way that allows for me to connect with some truly extraordinary people. The diversity of friends that I've acquired from walks of life, from very different walks of life, is outrageous. And my younger brother. Those 3. Thank you. Next question. Julia. Have you ever been to therapy? Yes, I have, Julia. So here's a piece of APL lore. My parents split when I was 7 years old, my parents would then continue. I'm sorry, no, let me start over. My parents split when I was 7 years old, And for the next 6 years of my life, then they would go on to have excessive legal battles in different courts in different parts of the world. And often for these court cases, the children of the affected individuals in court have to be screened psychologically to determine health and all these things. So I've been to therapy in Ireland, I've been to therapy in Germany, I've been to therapy in Poland. So yes, to answer your question, yes. Now there are many different forms of therapy, many different forms of therapy. You know what? I'm gonna finish the answer here. Yeah. Yes, I have been to therapy. Am I currently in therapy, and would I consider going to therapy again anytime soon? No, I would not. And no, I am not. I will say this. Fuck it. I will say this. I think in a large amount of cases, specifically cases that are relevant to men and young men. By young, I'm speaking broadly, 15 to, no, let's say 20 to 40. I've observed that there's a correlation in my life. This is just me, but I've observed there's a correlation between men of that age category who are in therapy and an acute and aggressive lack of action taking on their part in their lives. Conversational therapy is not always the way to go. It's a tool that can help, certainly. And again, therapy is very broad, and there are many different forms of therapy. However, to simply assume that therapy can be of help to anyone is wrong. Very wrong. I have a story to this, but I can expand on this if you like for me to expand. Just write a comment or shoot me a question in my Instagram DMs. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Next question. My good friend Sabrina Sipasfk on Instagram asks, what you eating 10 pieces of bread for, brother? This is very simple. I posted an Instagram story of me eating French toast. Excuse me, let me say that again. I posted an Instagram story of me eating French toast. On the plate, I had 11, not 10, 11 toast waiting for me. Nice big pieces of bread, tonked in egg, pan, butter, the whole thing. Put them on my own second plate, put some honey on them, badam. Sourdough bread, French toast, lots of honey, lots of protein, an exceptional meal. Now, what am I eating 10 pieces of bread for? Very simple. I don't want to be a skinny, scrawny bitch. That's basically it. If I don't eat, but I train at the volume that I'm training at, I will become a skinny, scrawny, oat milk drinking little bitch. I don't want to be a skinny, scrawny, oat milk drinking little bitch. I want to have my strong quads. I want to have manly shoulders. I would like to have some form of bicep curvature on my arm. I would like to have pecs when I wear t-shirts. And I would like for a woman to look at me and think to herself, that man's testosterone levels are healthily balanced. I want that. I am vain enough to admit All men, all great men, all they've ever done is just try to impress women. Almost every single bridge across Europe has been built by some motherfucker trying to get pussy. That's basically what it boils down to. So, Sabrina, to answer your question, I eat 10 pieces of bread for pussy. Not any pussy, don't get me wrong. Not the hedonist kind of, I want quick sex. But I want a good woman to look at me one day and go, that one. I want him. So until for as long as I will train as I'm training, I will eat as I eat. Thank you very much. Love you. Next question. Oh, fucking hell. 6ishtarzi66. Change the handle, man. Fucking hell. Beside the everyday running routine, do you include strength training in your preparation? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Muscular strength, tendon strength, soft tissue strength in general need to be able to uphold me after days of running. You can't just rely on training volume and your aerobic base and your cardiovascular system. You need strong bones. You need strong muscles. You need to be robust. I currently weigh 86 kilo, so I'm relatively heavy for someone who's competing in the ultra space. Relatively, I say again. But yes, I do 100 push-ups every single morning and every single evening. So that's 200 push-ups a day. And I train strength training globally twice a week. Currently, I'm going to punch those numbers up in due time. But yes, if you are doing what I'm trying to do, if you're trying to do what I'm doing, you have to train strength. Thank you for the question. Next question. Jana. What goes through your mind while running? That's a very difficult question to answer, Jana. I'm going to read you a journal entry from the Project Texas journal, and that will be my answer. And if you'd like for me to elaborate, again, comment section. But this is far too complicated a question. Again, running, I've said before and I will say now, is not a physical endeavor. It's very much a spiritual endeavor. So a lot of things go on in my mind. But I'll read you the journal entry and hope that is enough to satisfy your curiosity. If I maintain a slower pace in training, approximately 6.5 minutes per kilometer, I have access to so much more of my rational mind. Additionally, as a result of what can feel like forced inhibition, it feels, forcing myself into a state of meditation. When maintaining a 5-minute 10 per kilometer pace, for example, although still relatively easy, I am forced or inclined to tap in and make use of energy reserves provided to me by the emotional plane. How I would characterize or define this plane, I'm not exactly sure yet. The terms are work in progress. The distribution of such energy is limited, so I should look to use very short runs to recover not only from the weekly training strain, but also to let my mind recover from drawing on imagery linked to heightened emotion to accompany me on my runs, which is a shame because I do like to be creative when I run. So imagery. Jana, imagery. Thank you. Next question. Almost through. Florian, do you have a connection to Silesia? Silesia is a historical region in Europe, mainly in Poland, but also in Germany and the Czech Republic, linked to warfare in the last century. I'm from Poland, but I do not have any links to Silesia as far as I'm concerned. So that's that. Next, Leos. I will say this. Leos is a very, very devoted and supportive man. And I appreciate your support, man. I really do. Thank you. I see the comments. I read the comments. I see the messages. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. What drives you? Leos would like to know. Living a life worth living. Living a life worth speaking of and talking about and writing about. Living a tale. Living out a myth. Looking for the extremes of emotion and experience. That is what drives me. Individuation. That's what drives me. Thank you, brother. Last two questions. Abby asks, you speak life into others so effortlessly. How do you do this for yourself in a race setting? What does your self-talk look like? I find it funny. No, not funny. I find it interesting, almost amusing, that the word effortlessly was used. The answer is twofold. First, I think a fish would have a very difficult time explaining how it swims. As I will have a very difficult time explaining how I speak. But what I can say is that I have lived a life that has been rich in hardship and challenge and difficulty. And nothing about that has been effortless. Nothing about my life has been effortless. And so perhaps I speak effortlessly life into others because I don't engage with life effortlessly. The strongest people in your life are the people who have been the most exposed to hardship. One thing people get wrong about mental strength and grit is its inherent genetic component. Surely there's some of it there. I'm sure, yeah, but you can have a predisposition to be strong and full of grit, but if you never really build a relationship with that aspect to yourself, if you never engage with life in a way that requires of you to be full of grit and strength, you will never develop these things. They're like muscles. They can be trained. And so again, the strongest people in your life are precisely the strongest people in your life because they have been exposed to opportunities to present themselves as strong the most often. If you pray for strength, God will supply you with the opportunity to present yourself as strong. If you pray for courage, God will present you with the opportunity to face a fear. If you pray for a caring nature, God will present you with opportunities to face yourself when you're impatient and hurt. Because if you then can still muster up the courage to be full of care for someone, then you are caring. The same goes for strength. If you can muster up the courage to continue even though you're weak, you build strength. My self-talk, I don't really have self-talk. And if I do, if I experience myself talking to myself in a training session, it's exactly this. It's a live rendition. This is a live rendition of what you're asking for. So perhaps I speak life into others effortlessly because I have avoided, and never really had the luxury of living an effortless life. And if I didn't, then I'm glad I didn't. Thank you for the question. Next and last question. And I'm glad we're kicking it off with something simple. Florian asks, what's currently going on in Warsaw? Brother, APL is prepping to win a race in Texas. That's what the fuck is going on in Warsaw, okay? He's speaking to you at 3:35 a.m. on a Friday morning. That's what's going on in Warsaw. To anyone who is still potentially listening, I thank you. This has been the Q&A, and I will hope to do this once a week. I will ask for questions to record these episodes every weekend. Hopefully, you continue to give me difficult questions, and hopefully, I will do even better to be awake and ready to answer them at length. I am not shy when it comes to speaking for long periods of time. We've done this. We're about an hour in, shorter than I expected. So, if you're still watching, it means you're of support for me, and for this I thank you. I really do. I look forward to recording again tomorrow. For now, that is all. So from my end, I will finish this off in typical fashion for myself. Thank you, friends. All the best and much love. APL.